The Dasamsa, or the tenths of signs, creates a chart which allows us to directly interpret your level of success. So it has these two themes, perfection and success. And by perfection, we mean, what have you perfected? What are you very good at? What is your area of expertise? And that also kind of implies, what are your powers? What kind of special skills or abilities do you have? And since it shows your expertise, it shows where you are likely successful, and therefore, where do you hold positions of power? Where are you able to be an authority and be respected as an authority, be well known, be famous? In other words, if you sum up the whole thing together, where do you have your best career? That's what this subchart is really revealing to us. If you want to know what this means to you and your chart, I have just released a brand new and very groundbreaking report that explores exactly that, all of the subdivisions for your chart. It's available now on my site, victicare.com. Let's take a minute to explain what this dashamsha even is. What is the tenths of signs and how does it form a chart? So it is one of 5 other zodiacal subdivisions of the signs. It's a zodiac within the zodiac. The way that you map it out is you simply create 10 equal divisions within every sign. And then start at the beginning of Aries and describe the first division of Aries as Aries itself, and then continue in order. Now that may sound familiar if you watched my previous video about the Daśāṁśa, the 7th of signs. But you'll notice in this case something strange happens when you get to the end of Aries. At the 10th division of Aries, we have Capricorn, and then we also have Capricorn in the first division of Taurus. Instead of continuing normally like it did in the Daśāṁśa, it sort of hiccups. So what's that all about? But then after that hiccup, things continue in normal order, and we don't see the hiccup again at the end of Taurus. Instead, we see something even stranger. It flips from Libra to Gemini. So what really is the pattern here in the 10th subdivision? It's actually simple. The male signs, like Aries, start from themselves. So Aries starts with Aries, Gemini starts with Gemini, Leo starts with Leo, etc. But the female signs don't start with themselves. They start with their 9th sign. So Taurus starts with Capricorn. Cancer starts with Pisces. Virgo starts with Taurus, and so on. Look at it a little bit further even. The male signs, they begin with themselves, but coming into any male sign, it's always a jump of a 9th. So for example, Aries begins with Aries. And what's the previous dashamsha? The last dashamsha of Pisces? It's Leo. And the jump from Leo to Aries is a 9th, 9 signs. And the female signs don't begin with themselves, but they begin from their 9th sign, and the previous sign coming into it is also the 9th. So really what you're seeing with Daśāṁśa is the dynamic of 5s and 9s, trines, created by tenths. And if anybody is familiar at all with Vedic astrology, the most fundamental yoga is essentially the combinations of the tenths and the 9ths, or the kendras and the konas, to form the dharma, karma, adhipati yogas, more famously known as Raj yogas. The chart itself is a Raj yoga, and if you really lit up this chart and have great stuff happening in this chart, then it's like having a great Raj yoga in your chart. Now let me spend a moment to explain how you figure out what your Daśāṁśa chart is. All that you need to know are the positions of your planets, and then have the zodiac divided by that rule that we just discussed. So you just need to know that the size of a 10th is 3 degrees, because 30 divided by 10 is 3. So then just take any position of any of your planets and divide it by 3, and round it up, and you'll figure out what dashamsha slice it's in. Once you know the signs, you just pop up a new chart. You take the ascendant sign, Dasamsa sign, write it in as the first house, go in order clockwise from that to figure out the signs of all the dashamsha houses. Then go step by step through your planets and add them. Of course, the interesting thing about these subdivisional charts is that planets which are in different zodiac signs can wind up in the same zodiac sign in the subdivision. For example, in this chart, Venus is in the Libra dashamsha of Virgo, and Mars is in the Libra dashamsha of Leo. So even though they're in two separate zodiac signs, they can join here in the dashamsha. And that is why this kind of chart is called a Varga in Sanskrit. Varga means consolidation. Now that you have your Dasamsa chart, you interpret it. And you interpret it the same way you interpret a regular chart. That's why you took the trouble to draw it out as a chart. But I just want to show you the most important overview ways of interpreting the whole chart rather than little pieces of it. First of all, the most important thing to get a pulse of the dashamsha is to figure out the overall dignity that it has. Because you can use that information to make a quick snapshot interpretation of how well you do with the dashamsha themes, which are success, career, and so forth. If your dashamsha has more overall negativity, then these themes of having power and being recognized and having career success will take a lot more effort and not really be as perfect as you would like. But if your dashamsha has a lot of overall positivity to it, then these same things come more naturally, more easily, with less effort, and come more fully or more completely or on a larger scale. How do you figure out the overall dignity of a subdivision? You basically take an average of the dignity of everything in that subdivision. It would be best if you don't just consider the sign dignity when making that average, but you also consider the impact of the house the planet occupies in that subdivision and its lordships in that subdivision. That is indeed what I do for you in my new report. The other really important and relatively simple technique I want to show you is the sorting of this division by dominance of the planets in it. So this is what that information looks like in the report that I'm offering. It's just a sorted list from top to bottom. The higher the planet is on the list, the more dominant they are in this subdivision. And if you want to know the exact values so you can compare, those are also given in the bars underneath each item. If you want to know how you figure that out, it's kind of complicated, but basically it's determined by how well things line up, how well something lines up, especially with the ascendant, but also with the moon and the sun in that subdivision. What you can do with this list is interpret it. And you interpret it as the more dominant planets are the more obvious and prevalent ways that you go about trying to achieve success, and the more relevant to your career, for example. Whereas the lower down the things are on the list, the more subliminal they are. Not so obvious. They're the more underlying things. So here in this example, the sun is the most dominant planet in the dashamsha. So this person, their biggest asset for their success is their sun, and that symbolizes confidence and all the other things that you know the sun symbolizes. But now Mercury is the second planet on this list. That means that the foundation for this confidence is mercurial for this particular person in this particular example. So that means that the source of their confidence and everything is how they may have sorted everything out in their intellect, or how well they have kind of absorbed a lot of information from many, many, many sources. It can also have to do with how well they can communicate and use words or use symbols, all different things that Mercury represents. So the career would be sun-based with the Mercury root. And like that, you go down this list and you come up with these really, really important and useful interpretations. But I want to highlight certain symbols that you see on this list. You can see, for example, there's some upside down triangles, some right side up triangles, and some flags. The upside down triangles mean you should tone this down. The right side up triangles mean the opposite. You should play this up. What is the criteria by which the report decides to give you an upside down or a right side up triangle on something? If you have a planet that's high up on the list, yet doesn't have a very strong dignity, then it gets an upside down triangle. So Sun, for example, it's the first planet on this person's list, which seems great for a dashamsha to have the Sun up there on the top. But the dignity is only 11%. So actually what's happening is they're way overdoing this confidence and independence and egoism of the Sun. They could really tone that down and get better success in career and fame and so on. Even the person's Mercury has an upside down triangle because it's high up on the dominance list, but its dignity is still below 50. Mercury is 46% dignified versus the Sun, which was 11. So it's not as intensely bad as the Sun is, but it's still something that they could tone down. Also, we should look at the planets that have a right side up triangle. So in this case, the first one is Mars. Mars is not very dominant, but it has a very high dignity, it has 100% dignity. And then it's followed by Ketu. Again, very low in the dominance list, but with a very good dignity, 76%. So that means this person could, play these up more, be more willing to take risks, be more ambitious, more Marsy, and also Ketu more mysterious. So if you think about it, this what it's kind of telling you on this particular list is, hey, your best planet here is Jupiter. You should really try to start with Jupiter and lead with Jupiter and be Jupiter when it comes to your career. And feel free to dig into the chart to interpret more details about Jupiter beyond just the basic root symbolisms of the planets. For example, this Jupiter is in Cancer in the third house with the moon. You can go ahead and interpret those specific details as well and ascribe those to be your best path forward for career. There's one more mark on this list in the report that I want to make sure you understand because it's very useful. It's the flag. You can see certain items on the list have been flagged. For example, the first one is Mercury. Why does it have a flag? There's two types of planets, hard and soft. Mercury is a soft type. It's not aggressive. Whereas the Sun is a hard type. It's more aggressive. So there is a juxtaposition on this particular dominance list of the Sun transitioning into Mercury, which is jarring. It's difficult to go from a soft to a hard or from a hard to a soft. People like consistency. But this type of thing is inconsistent. So this particular individual has all this bravado and confidence and self-assuredness due to their Sun being so high up in their Daśāṁśa. But the backup for that is Mercury, which is like confusing to people because Mercury isn't about confidence and decisiveness. It's about plurality and, openness, tactfulness, and middlingness. When the item in your list has a flag, you have to become more aware of the fact that people will be confused when you switch gears to that planet. Like when this particular person switches gears from the confidence and assertiveness of the Sun into sort of the friendliness and, equal discussiveness of Mercury, people are going to feel like, where did this come from? So knowing that, you have to try to switch into it more gently and not be so heavy all of a sudden and switching them very suddenly. The same thing is on this list between the Moon and Saturn. So it goes from kind of like a warm, empathic type of asset to this kind of critical and scrutinizing sort of asset. And the transition between, it's not that one is good and one is bad, it's the transition between the two that you have to be very careful about when you have flags on your list. Now, the only remaining question is, how do you get this report so that you can get this information for yourself? That's fairly easy. You go to my website, victorcara.com, and you click on the readings link, and then you select what module you want. If you want the basic chart interpreted, get the basic module, and if you want all of your subdivisions, including the Dasamsa interpreted, then you click to include also the subdivisions module. And then you click this to enter your birth data, and then you click this button to order it. Please don't forget to like and comment, and your likes and your comments help YouTube recognize that this video is something that should be shown to new people. So please help out with that. Thank you so much.